The next time you need Social Security to answer a question for you, there will be fewer people on the other end than at any point since 1967. Not fewer than last year. Not fewer than before the cut started. Fewer than 1967. Back when the agency did not yet run the disability program at all and served 52 million fewer people than it serves today. That is not a projection or somebody's opinion about the future. It is the staffing number, and it is already true while you are watching this. Now, I want to be careful and precise here, because this subject attracts a great deal of noise, and you deserve better than noise. Your check is not stopping. Nobody is losing a benefit because of anything in this video. Every dollar you are owed is still owed to you, and it is still coming. If somebody has told you otherwise, they were wrong, and I want that settled in the first minute rather than the last. What has changed is not the money. It is whether there is anybody available when something goes wrong with it. And that distinction matters more than almost anything else I could tell you, because in this system, nothing gets fixed on its own. A wrong amount, a missing payment, a form that needs signing, a letter you do not understand. Every one of those requires a human being to look at your file. That has always been true. What is different now is how many human beings there are. So here are the three things happening right now, and every one of them touches you regardless of which benefit you receive or how long you have been receiving it. 1. The staffing. More than 8,000 people have left that agency in 15 months, the largest single-year reduction in its history, and it has landed on every state in the country rather than a few. 2. The doors. The agency's own operating plan for this year sets a target of cutting field office visits roughly in half. Not visits that were unnecessary. Visits. Rural offices have already closed for lack of anybody to staff them. 3. September the 30th. That is the last day of the federal budget year, and what happens on that date determines how the agency operates going into winter. I will tell you exactly what that does and does not mean for your payment, because last time this came around, a great many seniors were frightened by people who either did not know or did not care. And I will finish with the one figure that tells you whether to believe any official statement about this at all. It is not a number about staffing. It is about something that was supposed to be published and quietly was not. My name is Kevin. I read the rules, so you do not have to. Every week, I go looking for the thing that quietly decides what happens to your money, and I bring it here before it costs you anything. If that sounds useful, subscribe and turn on the bell, because the practical advice in the second part of this video works far better if you act on it before the autumn rather than during it. Change number 1. There are 8,000 fewer people at that agency than there were 15 months ago. Let me put that in proportion, because a big number on its own means nothing. That is roughly 14% of the entire workforce, and it happened in a little over a year. It is the largest reduction in a single year that the agency has ever recorded. And it did not happen in one region or a handful of offices. 42 states and the District of Columbia lost more than 10% of their Social Security staff between the start of last year and this spring. So wherever you live, this is your state. There is no version of this that is happening somewhere else to other people. Now here is what actually matters, which is what those people were doing. Almost nothing at that agency is automatic once your situation stops being ordinary. Your monthly payment is automatic, your annual increase is automatic. Those run on computers, and they will keep running no matter how many people leave. But everything else needs a person. Somebody has to review an appeal. Somebody has to correct an earnings record. Somebody has to look at why a payment stopped. Somebody has to process a claim after a spouse dies. Somebody has to make a determination on a waiver. Every one of those is a human sitting at a desk making a judgment about your specific file. Take out 14% of the desks, and the work does not shrink to match. It queues. And queues in this system do not distribute themselves evenly. They land hardest on the most time-sensitive things, because the most time-sensitive things are also the most complicated. And complicated work is what gets pushed back when there are too few people. Which means the person who feels this first is not somebody with a simple question. It is a widow trying to switch onto a survivor payment. It is a family whose parent has just died. It is somebody whose payment stopped for a reason nobody has explained. Those are precisely the situations where waiting 3 months instead of 3 weeks is not an inconvenience. It is rent. Now, the agency has responded to this criticism directly, and I am going to give you their side properly, because you should hear it. The commissioner has stated publicly that service has improved substantially. The figures cited include field office wait times down by around 30%, the backlog of initial disability claims reduced by more than 30% from nearly 1.3 million to around 853,000, and hundreds of millions of transactions moved online. Those are real claims made on the record, and some of them are supported. The disability backlog reduction in particular is a genuine achievement if the numbers hold, and I am not going to pretend otherwise for the sake of a better video. But independent analysts looking at the same period have reported that telephone wait times are considerably longer than what is advertised publicly, that waits for appointments are hitting widows and bereaved families hardest, and that local offices are struggling to function with the staff they have left. So you have an agency reporting improvement and outside observers reporting strain in the same months about the same offices. Both can produce true statements because they are counting different things. And I will come back at the end of this video to the one piece of information that tells you which picture to trust. Let me tell you about Roscoe. Roscoe is 72, and his wife of 44 years died in February. He did the correct thing. He reported it. He was told what he needed to bring, and then he waited for an appointment to make a claim that in an ordinary year would have been handled in a few weeks. He is a practical man. He assumed there was a queue and that queues move. What he did not know is that his own payment stayed exactly the same the entire time he waited, because switching onto the higher survivor amount does not happen until somebody processes the claim. So every month of waiting was a month at the lower figure, in a household that had just lost one of its two incomes, in the year that is already the most expensive year of most people's lives. Nobody did anything wrong to Roscoe. There was simply nobody free to reach his file, and nothing in the process he went through ever told him that the delay itself had a price attached to it. That is the whole reason the Quiet Rules exists. Plain English, printed large enough to read without hunting for your glasses, on the things that quietly decide what happens to your money. What has to be claimed rather than granted, which delays cost you money and which do not, and the exact words that move a file to the front of a queue, so that nobody in your family is waiting quietly for something they should have been pushing on. It is at kevinexplains.shop. The link is in the description below and in the pinned comment at the top, and if you are watching this on a television right now, there is a code on the screen you can point your phone camera at. 7-day guarantee, always. If it does not hand you something you did not have before, you send it back. So here's a question worth sitting with. If something went wrong with your payment next month, do you actually know how you would reach a person about it? And I want to spell out which delays actually cost you money and which do not, because that distinction decides how hard you should push, and almost nobody makes it. Some delays cost you nothing at all. If you file a retirement claim and it takes 4 months to process, you are paid back to your entitlement date when it finishes. The money follows you. Frustrating, not expensive. Other delays are pure loss, and the money never comes back. A survivor claim is the clearest one because until it is processed, you continue receiving the lower amount, and retroactivity on those is capped at 6 months. Wait longer than that, and the difference is simply gone. The same logic applies to switching from one benefit to a higher one on your own record. And a third category is worse still, because the clock is not the agency's at all. Medicare enrollment windows do not pause because an office is short-staffed. If your window closes while you are waiting for somebody to answer, you carry a penalty for the rest of your life, and nobody at that agency has the authority to give you those months back. So, when you are deciding whether to chase something or wait patiently, that is the question to ask. Is this delay costing me money or just costing me time? If the answer is money, patience is not a virtue in this situation. It is expensive. Change number 2, the doors. This one is documented in the agency's own internal operating plan, and the number in it is the reason it deserves a section. In the 12 months ending last September, field offices across the country recorded more than 31.6 million visits. The operating plan for this year sets a target of no more than 15 million. Sit with those two figures next to each other, 31 million down to 15 million, roughly half. And the plan is not describing a prediction of what people will choose to do. It is a target. The agency's stated reasoning is that more people are using the website and the telephone, and there is truth in that, and there are also at least 7,000 fewer staff and rural offices that have closed because there was nobody left to open them. So the practical question is the honest one. If 16 million visits are not happening, Where do those people go instead? Some of them genuinely go online, and for people comfortable with a computer, that is a real improvement. I use it myself and it works. But look at who walks into a field office rather than using a website. The oldest people. The people furthest from a city. People who do not use computers and never have. People whose situation is complicated enough that a form cannot hold it. People who tried the telephone and could not get through. That is not a random sample of the population, and it never has been. There is also a change in the plan about appointments that sounds like an improvement and needs reading twice. The plan requires all requested appointments to be scheduled within 30 days, against a current rate of about 78% meeting that timeline. Now, on its face, that is better. In practice, a target for scheduling is not a target for resolving. An appointment inside 30 days is a good thing if the person you meet can finish the job. It is a different thing entirely if the appointment happens on time and then the work behind it sits in a queue anyway, because the constraint was never the calendar, it was the number of people. So here is what to actually do about it, and this is the part I want you to write down. First, telephone before you travel. Offices have closed, and some that are still listed are operating by telephone only until further notice. The agency's own website lists closures and limited service locations. Check that your office is open on the day before anybody gets in a car. Second, when you do get an appointment, go once rather than twice. Say clearly what you are coming to do and ask directly what documents to bring for that specific purpose. Originals rather than copies. If it involves a death, a marriage, or a divorce, bring the certificate. If it involves a bank account, bring something printed from the bank rather than a number on a phone screen. Third, and this is the one almost nobody does, every time you speak to anybody at that agency, write down the date, the time, the name of the person, and what they told you. In a system this stretched, files get handed between people, and the person with a written record of what was promised is in a completely different position from the person relying on memory. Fourth, set up your online account now, while nothing is wrong. Not because you intend to manage your affairs on a computer, because that account is what keeps the other routes open, and because an account that is difficult for you to create is difficult for somebody else to create in your name. And fifth, if your situation is genuinely urgent, say so in those terms. There are categories of urgent need that are treated differently from ordinary queue traffic, and they exist precisely for people about to lose housing, utilities, or medication. That does not mean claiming urgency you do not have. It means that if you are actually in that position, saying it plainly and specifically is not making trouble. It is the mechanism working the way it was built to work. Now, the telephone, because that is where most of you will actually try first. A few things that genuinely help. Early in the morning is better than late. The middle of the week is better than Monday, which is always the worst day of the week to call any government office. And the first few days of any month are heavier than the middle, because that is when payments land and problems surface. There is also a callback option rather than holding, and it is worth using, but understand what it is. You keep your place in the queue and get your afternoon back. It does not move you forward, and the callback can arrive hours later, so keep the phone with you and answer numbers you do not recognize that day. And know what you can settle without a person at all. Changing an address. Setting up or changing direct deposit once your identity is verified. Getting a benefit verification letter, which is the document banks and housing offices constantly ask for. Getting a replacement tax form. Checking your earnings record. All of that is available through your own account, and every one of those handled online is one fewer thing you are waiting in a queue for. Now here is the thing I most want you to remember out of this entire video, because it is free, it works, and almost nobody watching this knows it exists. If you are genuinely stuck with Social Security, and I mean months stuck rather than weeks, your member of Congress can intervene on your behalf. Every single one of them, in both parties, keeps staff whose actual job is what they call casework, helping constituents with federal agencies. It is not a favor and it is not political. It is one of the core functions of a congressional office, and they do it for anybody in their district, regardless of who that person voted for. Here is how it works in practice. You contact the local district office, not the office in Washington. Almost every congressional website has a section for help with a federal agency. You explain the problem, and you sign a privacy release form, which they will give you because the agency cannot discuss your file with anybody without it. That inquiry then goes into the agency through a completely different door from the one you have been standing at. It arrives at a dedicated liaison rather than the general queue, and it comes with a member of Congress's name on it. I am not going to tell you it works every time because nothing does. What I will tell you is that a case that has sat for 4 months with no movement frequently starts moving within weeks of that inquiry going in, and the people who work inside that agency will tell you the same. And the reason to know about it now, in September, rather than in January, is that a queue getting longer is exactly the situation this is designed for. You have both senators and a representative. All three have caseworkers. It costs nothing. Let me tell you about Juanita. Juanita is 69 and drove 90 minutes each way to the office nearest her because the closer one had shut. She got there at 7:30 in the morning to be near the front. What she found was a notice on the door saying the office was operating by appointment only, and a security guard who was entirely decent about it and had no authority to change anything. She drove 90 minutes home. The information that would have saved her 3 hours and a tank of fuel was published on a website she does not use, about an office she had been visiting for 11 years, and nobody had any obligation to tell her. And that is the part that gets me. Not the closure. Closures happen and budgets are real. It is that a person can be given no notice at all about a building she has relied on for a decade, and the entire burden of finding out falls on the person least equipped to go looking. That is exactly the gap this guide closes. Not to make anybody an expert in how that agency runs, to put the handful of things that save a wasted trip and a lost month in one place, in plain language, so that the effort a person is already willing to make actually lands somewhere useful. Same place. kevinexplains.shop, link in the description and in the pinned comment at the top, and the code on your screen if you are watching this on the television. 7-day guarantee, no argument. A woman standing outside a locked door at 7:30 in the morning, 90 minutes from home. Change number 3. September the 30th. That is the final day of the federal budget year. Every year, Congress has to pass funding for the year that begins the following day, and if they do not, parts of the government stop operating until they do. Now, I want to handle this carefully because this is where the misinformation gets thickest and where the most damage gets done to people watching a channel like this one. Here is the single most important thing in this section, and I want it stated as plainly as I can. Your Social Security payment does not stop during a government shutdown. It has never stopped. It is not funded the way most government activity is funded. It comes from a separate source that does not require Congress to pass a bill each year, which is precisely why payments continued the last time this happened and every time before that. So if you see a video or get a message or hear from a neighbor that your check will not arrive because of a budget fight, that is false. It was false last time. It will be false this time. Please tell anybody who repeats it to you. Medicare does not stop either. Your coverage continues. Now here is what genuinely is affected, because I am not going to tell you nothing happens. The staff who provide service are affected. During a lapse, portions of the workforce that are not directly tied to issuing payments can be sent home, and that is happening to an agency that has already lost 14% of its people. So the effect is not on the money. It is on everything that requires a person, which is exactly the list I gave you at the start of this video. Appeals, corrections, new claims, complicated determinations. There is recent precedent for this, and it is worth knowing rather than guessing about. The last funding lapse ran from the start of October into the middle of November. Payments went out on schedule throughout, service work slowed, and the backlog created during it took considerably longer to clear than the lapse itself lasted. That is the pattern to expect if it happens again. The money arrives, the help does not. So the practical instruction is simple, and it has a date on it. If you have anything pending with that agency, or anything you have been meaning to sort out, do it in September rather than October. A form to file, a correction to request, an appointment to make, an appeal to lodge. Get it into the system while the system is fully staffed, rather than into a queue that may be about to get longer. That is not panic. It is the same reasoning as filling the car before a storm. It costs you nothing if nothing happens. And let me be specific about what pending actually covers, because most people hear it and think it does not apply to them. It covers an appeal you have been meaning to file, a correction to your earnings record you have known about for years, a survivor claim that has not been processed, a request to have a Medicare surcharge recalculated after your income dropped, an overpayment notice sitting in a drawer, a representative appointment form you never filed, a change of address or bank details you have been putting off, a benefit verification letter you will need for a housing application in the spring. Any one of those, done in September, is done. The same thing started in October may sit. And there is one more category that catches people out completely, so I want to name it. If you are turning 65 in the next several months or losing employer health coverage, the Medicare enrollment window you are inside has hard edges to it that do not move for anybody's budget dispute. A lapse does not extend your deadline. It just makes it harder to reach somebody while the clock runs. If that is you, that is a September job rather than a November one. Let me tell you about Merlin. Merlin is 78, and he has been meaning to sort out a problem with his earnings record for about 2 years. It is not urgent in the sense of anything being wrong with his money today. It is worth perhaps $40 a month to him, and $40 a month for the rest of his life, plus what is owed behind it, which is a number he has never actually worked out. Every time he has thought about it, he has decided it can wait. And he is right that it can. It has waited 2 years, and nothing bad has happened. But his $40 is sitting at the back of a queue that is being served by 14% fewer people than it was 15 months ago, in an office that may lose staff again, ahead of a date in September that could push everything back further. The problem is not that Merlin is wrong that it can wait. It is that every single month he waits, the queue in front of him gets a little longer, and the money behind him gets no larger. Now here is the figure I promised you at the start. In May of this year, the Social Security Administration did not publish its monthly performance measures. That is it. That is the number. A missing one. Those figures are how the public sees how long people are waiting on the telephone, how long appointments take, how deep the backlogs run. They are published monthly as a matter of routine, and in May, they simply were not. Now, I am not going to tell you that proves anything on its own. Agencies miss publication dates. Systems break. Staff who prepare reports are also staff who can be reassigned or cut, and there is a real irony in a reporting gap being caused by the very shortage it would have documented. But hold it next to everything else. You have leadership stating that service is working better and faster than ever. You have outside analysts reporting that telephone waits are far longer than advertised, and that bereaved families are waiting longest. And you have the monthly numbers that would let anybody settle the argument going unpublished. When the measurement stops, you are being asked to take a claim on trust, and you are entitled to notice when that happens. So I am not going to tell you the agency is lying to you. I do not know that, and neither does anybody else. What I will tell you is this. Judge it by what happens to you and to people you know, rather than by any announcement from any direction. Your own experience on the telephone this autumn is better evidence than any press release, and it is evidence nobody can revise. And there is a reason both pictures can be true at the same time, which is worth understanding rather than picking a side on. An agency this size does not have one queue. It has dozens. Disability claims are a different pipeline from retirement claims, which are different again from survivor claims, appeals, corrections, and overpayment reviews. Staff can be moved between them. So it is entirely possible to reduce a disability backlog substantially, honestly, and report it accurately by moving people onto that work from somewhere else. And it is equally possible that the somewhere else got worse at exactly the same time, and that the somewhere else is where widows and bereaved families are standing. Both statements are then true. One gets announced, the other gets experienced. That is not an accusation of dishonesty. It is how large organizations under pressure genuinely behave. And it is why an average across an agency serving 75 million people tells you almost nothing about the specific queue you happen to be standing in. Which is the practical reason to pay attention to what happens to the people around you rather than to any headline number in either direction. If 3 people at your church have waited months on survivor claims, that tells you more about your own situation than any figure published by anybody. Now let me give you my honest opinion, which is only that, and you are welcome to disagree with me in the comments. Some version of this was always going to happen, and I want to be fair about why. That agency has been running on a workforce that has not grown, while the number of people it serves has grown every year for decades. More people turn 65 each year than the year before. That was true under every administration for the last 30 years, and none of them fixed it. Anybody telling you this began 15 months ago is not describing something real. And modernization is not a bad word. Moving routine work online genuinely does help most people and frees staff for the work that needs a human. I use those tools, and they are better than they were. My objection is about sequence, and it is narrow. You do not remove 14% of the people first and build the replacement afterward. When you do it in that order, there is a stretch in the middle where the old way has been dismantled and the new way is not finished, and somebody has to live in that gap. And the people living in it are not the people who designed it. They are 80 years old. They are recently widowed. They are on a road 90 minutes from a locked door. And the second thing, which is the thread through everything on this channel, not one of these changes arrived at anybody's house. No letter went out saying the office you have used for 11 years now requires an appointment. No notice explained that a survivor claim would take 4 months this year rather than 4 weeks. The system simply started running differently, and the people it runs on found out by driving there. And there is one more thing I have to say before the checklist, because everything in this video creates exactly the conditions somebody exploits. When people hear that an agency is short-staffed and that a budget deadline is coming, a particular kind of call starts going around. Somebody says they can expedite your claim. Somebody says your benefits are at risk because of the shutdown and you need to confirm your details to protect them. Somebody offers, for a payment, to move you up a queue. None of that exists. There is no expediting service. There is no fee that moves a file. Nobody outside that agency and your own congressional office can touch your case, and your congressional office does it for nothing. And that agency will not telephone you out of the blue, asking you to confirm your social security number or your bank details to protect your payment from a budget fight. They already have your number. A shutdown does not create a verification requirement because a shutdown does not touch your payment at all. So if that call comes this autumn, and for some of you it will, put the phone down. Then look the number up yourself and call them if you have a real question. Never use a number somebody gave you on a call you did not make. All right, here is your list. 5 things, and you can do the whole thing in September. 1. Anything pending or half finished with that agency, move it this month. A correction, an appeal, a form, a claim, get it in before the end of September rather than after. 2. Telephone before you travel, every time. Offices have closed and some are appointment only. Confirm on the day. 3. Start writing things down. Date, time, name, what was said. Every call, every visit. It costs you nothing, and it is the difference between a claim and a memory. 4. Set up your online account while nothing is wrong and before somebody else sets one up in your name. 5. If you are recently widowed or somebody you know is, treat that claim as urgent rather than administrative. Every month it sits unprocessed is usually a month paid at the lower amount, and that is money that does not always come back. And if your own situation is tangled, if you are waiting on something and cannot tell whether the delay is costing you money, write to me. The address is on your screen and in the description below, and I read every one that comes in. One last thing before you go. Roscoe waited politely for months on a claim that was quietly paying him less every month he waited, and nothing in the process ever told him so. Juanita drove 3 hours to a locked door for information that existed on a website she has never used. And Merlin is right that his $40 can wait, and he is going to keep being right about that until the day the queue in front of him is too long to bother with. None of them did a single thing a sensible person would not have done. Not one of them was refused anything by any person. Every one of them was standing on the wrong side of a change that arrived with no announcement at all. So do the September things in September. Move what is pending. Telephone before you drive. Write down who you spoke to. And if there is somebody in your family who has just lost a husband or a wife, go and ask them today whether that claim has actually been processed, because they may be waiting quietly and losing money every month while they do. I am Kevin. Thanks for watching. Do not forget to check the quiet rules at kevinexplains.shop.